I'm Tom Baker, this is Chasing Cars, and today's a pretty cool day because it's our first opportunity to drive a really hotly anticipated car on Aussie roads for the first time. Obviously it's the new Hyundai i30N, which is the first real performance car Hyundai have ever made, and it's the first product from the Korean brand's N Motorsport division. We did drive this car together about 4 months ago in conjunction with the World Rally Championship in Coffs Harbour, and you can check out that early preview video by clicking up here. But we now know much more about the i30N that Australians can buy. And we can only buy the best one offered throughout the world. It's the performance pack that has 202 kilowatts of power and 353 newton meters of torque from its 2-litre Turbo 4, with a proper locking diff on the front axle and a 6-speed manual gearbox inside. You can't get an auto for about 18 more months at this point. The i30N on paper looks like pretty mega value. This car is under $40,000. It's a fair bit cheaper than a 5-door Golf GTI, Peugeot 308 GTI, etc. But it offers more bang for your buck. So the big question really is the i30N a Golf GTI killer? And broader than that, is this car really the king of the affordable front-wheel drive hot hatches? Well, that's what we're here to start finding out.
So here's how this review is going to go. As usual, I'll take you through this car's interior, which is definitely an important factor for an everyday sports car. Then we'll take the i30N out onto the brilliant roads in deep South New South Wales and Northern Victoria, before heading to Winton tomorrow, where we'll test the i30N's track capabilities and get up to a bit of silliness. But first, let's jump inside.
Largely, the interior of the i30N is just as we remember it from the last time we drove this car together about 4 months ago. However, now that the Australian specification has been confirmed, there are some key differences between the standard $39,990 i30N and then the $42,990 luxury pack. This particular car is a luxury pack, and the biggest difference comes in the seats. The standard car has comfortable and supportive cloth seats, and 4-way power lumbar for the driver is standard across the range, but the seats get quite a bit better if you spend that little bit of extra money on the luxury pack. The upholstery changes to leather and suede, but that's not the most important part. The best part is that they let you get into a better driving position. Both the front seats have power adjustment, there's memory for the driver, but most importantly, there's quite aggressive under-thigh angle adjustment, which means the seat supports your legs better in the luxury pack and lets you sit behind this really nice sporty steering wheel in a better way. On that steering wheel, you get black leather with perforations and performance blue stitching, and you'll note these really prominent additional buttons over the standard i30. On the left is the drive mode button, which cycles between eco, normal and sport, your everyday driving modes. On the right is the N drive modes button, the standard N, which is as hard as the i30 gets, and then N custom, which lets you change all of the different metrics about how this car drives. Beyond that, you look forward at attractive analog gauges, which have been customized for the N and feature appropriate badging. Looking further afield, both trims of the N get this 8-inch touchscreen, largely shared with the normal i30, but you do get additional screens for customizing the N functions of the car. There's a lap timer, G-force meter, and bars to track the turbo pressure, torque and power output as well. Otherwise, most of the money in developing the i30N went into things under the skin of the car. There's not a huge amount of customization of this interior over, say, an i30 SR. There's lots of black plastic that covers the dashboard, some soft and some hard. In terms of knowing you're driving an i30N, it's really all about the blue buttons right in front of you, and also the nice feelsome manual gear knob down here that is a little bit reminiscent of the Golf GTI's golf ball shifter, but Hyundai have done their own thing with a nice performance blue strip that runs down the middle. The back of the i30 is pretty good. That starts with the fact that the doors open really wide, so you can get a child seat in here easily, or in fact two, because there's really well exposed ISOFIX points on both outboard seats. But for bigger kids and adults, the space back here is okay as well. For me at 6 foot, I've got more than enough headroom. Legroom is compromised by these pretty fat sports seats that you get in the end, so my legs are up against my own seat in front of me, and toe room is tight as well. But people aren't going to complain back here. After all, you're taking them for a ride in your new Hyundai i30N. Otherwise, the features in the back are pretty decent. You get a flip down armrest here with 2 large cup holders in it. No air vents, sadly, which is a bit weird, but the materials back here are all soft touch, and you don't even get that in a Volkswagen Golf. So it is quite a nice place to spend time if you need to take passengers in the back. The standard Hyundai i30 has a really practical boot, and it remains nice and usable with the i30N as well. Overall capacity does fall from 395 litres to 381, and that's because of the strut brace that's actually exposed within the boot. You can still fold the back seats forward, but that brace is going to make it really difficult to slide heavy things straight to the front. So if you're going to be doing a lot of heavy lifting, probably not the car for you. The rest of the boot is nice and practical. There are 2 shopping bag hooks, a 12-volt socket, and also a net to stop delicate items from flying around. So last time we drove the Hyundai i30N together, we were on the Rally Raceway, which is a stage of the World Rally Championships up in Coffs Harbour, but most of the time it's actually used as a go-kart track. So we really struggled to get the car over about 120 kilometers per hour. Today has been completely different. This has been my first experience driving this car out on real Australian roads, and it's been really enlightening. Obviously the question on everybody's mind is, for 40 grand, is the i30N the best bang for your buck in the hot hatch segment? Can it stand up to the punishing tests that are pretty brutal Australian roads? And for the most part, the answer is yes. This car really does work out there in the real world. It's a really compelling offer. So to run through what we're dealing with again, in Australia, Hyundai have opted only to take the i30N Performance Pack, as it's known in other parts of the world. So it has a 202 kilowatt, 353 newton meter tune of a 2-litre turbocharged 4-cylinder petrol engine. That torque figure does go up to 378 newton meters on overboost, and you can get up to 18 seconds of overboost at full throttle with this engine. It's available through most parts of the rev range. It does need a few seconds to cool in between your uses of that function, but the reality is that this car pulls really hard, and Hyundai have even hinted that it does better than its official 6.1 second 0 to 100 time, and I have to say I agree. It's pretty brutal at full throttle. That power is sent to the front wheels by way of a 6-speed manual only at launch. An 8-speed auto is about 18 months away from now. Thankfully, it's a good manual. There's a nice short throw, the shift is really positive, the clutch is mid-weighted, and the friction point is really easy to find. It's not a vague clutch like you get in some other performance hatches. Plus, Hyundai have built in rev match downshifts into the car. There's a button right here on the steering wheel to turn it on or off really quickly, which is great because about half the people I speak to think rev matching is the best feature since sliced bread, and about half hate it, so each to their own. At the front axle of the car, there's an electronically controlled, mechanically locking limited slip differential, which, as we found out on the Honda Civic Type R, the Golf GTI 40 years and performance, and a bunch of other hot hatches, having a proper diff at the front end makes all the difference, and the i30N performance is all the better for that. It reduces understeer considerably, it lets you get on the power out of corners much faster. So this car drives in a pretty linear and easy way. The turbo comes on song nice and quickly. It's not like a slow build up like in a Honda Civic Type R where you get everything at 3500 RPM. The i30N is easy to drive from low revs, and it sounds pretty good while it's doing it. This engine is pretty fizzy when you're not really on it. It doesn't sound brilliant until you start revving it out, but then it does give you lots of theatre. All you have to do is put it into N or N Custom, and you start getting lots of nice cracks and pops in this car. It sounds really, really great on the overrun. The i30N has 5 adjustable drive modes: Eco, Normal, Sport, N, and N Custom, and actually each of them feels pretty different. In Eco, the i30N is quiet with really light steering that a lot of people will like if you spend a lot of time in town and need to park the i30N into tight spaces. The steering gets progressively heavier as you progress through those drive modes, but most people will be most interested in N and N Custom. But my favorite mode is actually N Custom, because by default what that does is it leaves everything in N mode, but it slackens off the suspension back to normal. However, you can change every parameter in N Custom to be the particular blend that you like. For me, that's everything in N, softer suspension. And that's something that we need to talk about with the i30N, because Hyundai's original plan was actually to have one global ride quality tune for this car everywhere the i30N was sold. But then Albert Biermann, the head of Hyundai's N division, came out here to Australia and realised that our particularly crappy road surfaces were a little bit unsuitable for that global tune. So Hyundai Australia so far have been the only market to be allowed to tune the i30N's ride quality to suit local roads better. And that's worked. In normal, the i30N rides really well for the hot hatch class. It's firm, but you'd expect that. What it does is it rebounds really nicely after big bumps, it retains its composure, and it's generally livable every day. However, dialed right up into Sport Plus suspension settings, it's just too bouncy and too choppy to be comfortable. And on Victoria's country roads that I've been driving all day today, it was just too much. Speaking of the steering, it's perhaps a little bit too heavy in the Sport and N modes, but left in its normal mode, which you can customize through N Custom, the steering is pretty good. It has decent feel because the power steering is actually mounted right up here on the rack as opposed to the column on the standard i30.
So on the road, the i30N is pretty impressive, but what's it like on track? We filmed these outside shots when it was raining, as you'll see, but the laps that follow were completed at Winton in the dry.
So we're on the second day and we've now brought the i30N down to Winton Circuit in Victoria, because Hyundai say that one of the big differentiators of the i30 is that this is a much more focused and track-ready car than something like a Golf GTI. So let's take it for a lap and find out. So the first thing that you notice on track that you don't notice on the road is really just how strong and linear this turbocharged engine is right through the spread of the gear, allowing the car to really wind out. It's torquey and powerful right through the rev range, although that red line does come up faster than you might expect it to, and I found myself bouncing off the rev limiter a couple of times. It just doesn't seem to line up with where my ears think you're going to run out of revs. The nice short manual shift really helps around here. Just knock out a quick downshift. You're not guessing where in the gate you need to put the shifter. Nice light easy clutch helps. And as I said yesterday, the friction point is really predictable. So this is a nice car to change gear in, and I think it's an easy manual for people to drive even if you're coming from an auto and don't have much experience in the manual. The other big track focused element is the front LSD, and as I've just done, what it lets you do is just get on that power immediately on corner exit. You're still having to fight a little bit of understeer from the P0HNs, but you basically get rewarded for getting on that throttle early and just driving the i30N out of the corner hard. Do it again. You can hear those tyres scrubbing pretty loud, but there's not a problem with traction in this car. The last thing is the ride quality. I expected yesterday that effectively the full N mode with N suspension in Sport Plus would be really ideal for the track. But as it was on the road, the best driving setting for this car is actually N Custom. Slackening off that suspension works just as well here on track as it does out on the road. You get the car leaning a little bit more, not working its tyres so hard and so skiddishly as it seems to do in full N mode. We've been laying down times at Winton today of sort of 142, 143 without a lot of stress. And I think that that goes to show that the i30N is a quicker car, quite demonstrably, than something like a GTI in the bends as well as in a straight line. This car definitely just has that harder edge. So if you're looking for something with more bona fide performance than the Volkswagen that's still livable every day, I think this is probably your car, without that big 13 grand step up to the Honda Civic Type R. So yeah, I think Hyundai have got a really interesting niche for the i30N. It works well on road, it's pretty fun on track, incredible package for under 40 grand.
So that's my comprehensive opinion of the Hyundai i30N viewed as a standalone product. We've also compared this car to the Volkswagen Golf GTI, Honda Civic Type R and Peugeot 308 GTI 270, a hot hatch group test which yielded a surprising result, so make sure you watch that next. As an awesome valley performance hatch, you can actually track with confidence, and in many cases without voiding your warranty. The Hyundai i30N is currently pretty much unbeatable. However, as we found out in the group test, at legal road speeds, the i30N is still not completely dominant given the mass of this vehicle that prevents it from being immediately playful around and under 100 km per hour. Where the Hyundai truly comes alive and beats its rivals is when you're wringing its neck at a racetrack. So if you can commit to getting it on track with regularity, this really is the hatch for you. On the road, it's still a hoot, even if it isn't quite up to the adjustability of some rivals. The sound this thing makes is legendary, it's quick, it handles solidly, and it looks great while doing it. And at under 40 grand, I mean, come on. No matter which way you look at it, the Hyundai i30N is a game changer, and that is something to be heartily congratulated and celebrated.